All right, cool. So today's presentation, second presentation, is about the KCI airport update. Our panelists are from different organizations on what they do amongst themselves. If you're interested in getting credits, make sure you scan the QR code as you go out. There'll also be a sign-in sheet if you want to do that too. So turn it over to you guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. So we're going to talk about the KCI project. I'm going to start out talking a little bit about us. We won't bore you with all the details. A little bit about Clark Construction, who led the joint venture with White and Clarkson. Now we'll go to slide 2. I don't know what it is, Matt.
That's an arrow button.
That one, there we go.
You found it.
So, like I said, my name is Chris Smith, Vice President for Clark Construction. I oversee the operations here in Kansas City.
My name is Matt Grace, Senior Superintendent, and I did a lot of low voltage and the lower level oversaw that effort.
And I'm Matt Schwabauer, project manager.
All right, so a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. I have 4 kids. They keep me very busy. Wyatt, Landon, Gunner, and Summerly. There's us on our trip last summer at Disney. I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan by heart. Living in Kansas City, it's hard not to be a Chiefs fan, especially when they've been on the roll they have been. So I have become a Chiefs fan, but I'm still a Pittsburgh Steelers fan at heart.
We like that. The Broncos.
There we go. And I do enjoy fine bourbon. That is one of my hobbies that I've gotten into over time. I said bourbon in general, but Matt said if I read that on there, it looked like an alcoholic. So just going with fine bourbon, which is true. And then I've already talked about I oversee the operations for Clark here in Kansas City.
My name is Matt Grace. I'm a big. Yeah, you got me. I can beat you to it.
Oh, there we go.
My name is Matt Grace. I'm a big soccer and Chiefs fan. I like F1. Skiing is my favorite hobby. I have 2 kids, Oliver and Stella. My wife is a speech pathologist in Olathe. I'm a K-State grad, 2010 civil engineering, and as I mentioned, I focused initially on running the MEP systems, and then I did the lower level, we call it the arrivals level, and really focused on getting the local contractors across the finish line.
Thanks, Matt. Matt Schwabauer, longtime Lawrencian, born in Kansas City, Missouri. Been a ton of fun to be a part of this project. Went to Northwestern, really enjoy gardening and bicycling as a good Lawrencian does. And you can see my family up there. In the top right, we had a kids' day on the airport. And I think across the over 5 years we've been working on the job, that was probably my favorite single day, getting to show her the project. And it's pretty impressive that those cask helmets can fit on even the littlest kids. So that was a little bit about me.
All right, about Clark Construction, I won't spend a lot of time on the details, but for those of you who don't know Clark Construction, we came into this market about 12 years ago, did a project at Leavenworth, the housing project, left for a while, didn't have much work, and then back in 2015, we were awarded the KU Central District Development Project. It was an Edgemore-led development in the center of campus. If you're familiar with the camp, it was the Stockwood Place Apartments. So that's kind of what brought us back to the region. We do $6.3 billion a year. Started out in Washington, D.C. With Mr. Clark himself. He passed away in 2015. We've received over 1,500 project awards from DBIAs and other associations around the country. We work in 25 different market sectors across the country. We've been in business 117 years, founded in 1906 with Hyman and Omni Construction. It was a union and non-union arm who merged, I think it was 96, I probably should have known that before I came up here today, and became Clark Construction. We have 4,200 employees on the East Coast and some on the West Coast. We do some self-perform, so that is our hourly employees, if you will, and then we also have a pretty big staff across the country with salary folks. And we do have 13 offices across the country. We are in the process of opening an office in Kansas City. We should be in there late summer. We've found a spot. And we're working through that as we speak. All the areas in blues are markets that we focus heavily in. Just because you don't see it in blue doesn't mean that we haven't built anything there. We just don't have a significant presence in those states. But the areas in blue are where we're very focused. on building and continuing to work out of our local offices for projects in those areas. So let's talk a little bit about KCI. So we were awarded the project from Kansas City, Missouri. We worked for the Kansas City Aviation Department. They have a building right up on airport property, right across the street from our office. So they went out and sourced, Air Pros. Their sole purpose on the project was to represent the airlines. That's all they do. Airline interest, what do the airlines want? What do the airlines need? How are they going to be successful? What do we need in this project to get it up and running? Southwest was the biggest player in that. However, they did represent all of the airlines themselves. Paisley Management Group was an extension of KCAD. KCAD didn't have all of the staff to manage the project. They haven't built anything this large, so they brought in an owner's rep, if you will, and they were a true extension of the aviation department. Edgemore Infrastructure, they were the developer. They are the ones who won the job initially, and then Clark White's Clarkson, which is a joint venture, 60% joint venture of Clark, led by Clark, White's 30%, and Clarkson 10%. So that was kind of the JV split. We were an integral team there. If you came up and you saw us at the airport, you would leave there wondering what company we actually got our paychecks from. We were never divided. We didn't do anything differently. We didn't divide up the job, but we were an integral part together as one. However, Clarkson, for an example, they focus on heavy civil work. You see their names all over town. They managed a lot of the exterior building, all the site work and all of that, but part of the joint venture, there was Clark folks that reported to Clarkson folks. There was, White's people that reported to Clark people that reported to White. So we were a true integrated team. I think that was what helped with a lot of the success. And then SOM was our design build partner. SOM had a ton of design firms that worked underneath them so they could get all of their, meet all the requirements and take advantage of the local expertise that's out here in Kansas City, and they're based out of New York City. So the terminal itself, I'm sure a lot of you have probably seen this rendering before or something similar. Some of you probably already flown out of the new airport, but the new terminal sits where Terminal A sat. So we started out in 2019 with demo of Terminal A. You can see Terminal B and Terminal C, where they continue to operate until recently. Those terminals are going to be demolished here in the near future. The garages are going to stay, but the terminal themselves are going to go away. That's part of the airline agreement with the city, because they don't want, reality is they don't want someone to come in and use those terminals, maybe a more smaller airline, and then take their market share or take their clients, if you will, and fly them versus the airlines that actually help pay for the new terminal. You'll see the parking garage, that's 6,200 spaces. That was built by J.E. Dunn as a subcontractor to Clark White's Clarkson. So we were kind of acted as the owner's rep to J.E. Dunn on that, great partner on the garage. And then the terminal itself is $1.5 billion, 1.1 billion square feet, 40 gates, and 20 RONs, so that's remain overnight parking along the sides. It's a big deal for the airlines to have a lot of parking for aircraft overnight, because they don't know when a plane's going to get delayed, get shifted off, can't go to its destination, and they have to have a place to park in the night. And you can't just park a giant plane somewhere. So that's a really big deal. The owner's very focused on bonds. How many do I have? Where are they at? And are they accessible for us to tug them over to gate in the morning, even in bad weather? So that's a really big deal for an airport operations. And then I will turn it over to Matt.
All right. So we all know that a lot of people have thought that this project would struggle to hit its marks, right? Mega projects frequently do. On time, on budget, on schedule, all those things. They're very frequent that this process fails. So recently we came across a Wall Street Journal article that was published at the beginning of February called 99% of big projects fail. And we were kind of shocked, to be honest. And the statistics, which focuses on the work produced by Ben Flyberg and Dan Gardner, just recently published a new book of how big things get done. His numbers reported that only of mega projects over $1 billion, 49% are on budget, or 47% are on budget. And on time is a smaller margin, 8.5%, and with the expected benefits, 0.5%. So 99% of those projects don't achieve all three of those things simultaneously. So very surprised that that was the case. So today we wanted to really focus on why we were able to succeed. We highlighted safety. That was a critical part. We'll go through some of the details there. Our trade partner participation and engagement was phenomenal. Could not have done it without them. We had a lot of discipline. We had a lot of structure. We wanted to make sure that everybody knew what parameters to work within. We had teamwork. Everybody from top to bottom working together for a common goal. We had aggressive goals. They were defined very early. We communicated them often, we went over them, everybody understood what we were trying to achieve as a group. And then community engagement. We had a tremendous backing. We had tremendous support from the community in wanting us to succeed and willing to help us meet our goals.
And so to be successful at the end of the day, we had to get started on the right foot as well. I really like this photo because it represents some of the challenges we went through. So this is 2019, and this is the new head house right here. That's right there is the south end of Concourse A, and you can see this road that runs right through the head house, and that's aviation fuel, and there's a bunch of other utilities right here, and I think this represents the challenges you run in on any construction job, but everything gets amplified on a mega job like this. So I just really appreciated that photo, come across it, and shows some of the very earliest construction we went through. This is a good schedule overview. I think captures what a long job it has been. 2017 was when Edgemoor was selected as the developer, all the way up until just this past February when we opened. And some of the operations are still ongoing on the civil side. And it has been a long job. But it also hasn't been slow. You know, there wasn't, we built $40 million in several months. And we break it down into workdays. We're putting in $1 million of construction or more on a single workday, which is just sort of a mind-blowing fact to me. You know, 1,000 craft workers out there on some of our peak days. And that all would probably have occurred right here in the 2020 time period, maybe going into 2021, when we were right there in the middle of construction. So 3 different GMPs, and just a couple other milestones on their groundbreaking and topping out. So we're going to zoom in on June of 2019 here for a second. Just look at our design schedule. And what were we anticipating? What you see up here is kind of the as-built. And where did we anticipate that August of 2020 completion of design and being done with procurement at that same time? The principles, you know, on this job are the same as on any job. You know, you figure out your deadlines and you work backwards and you build a construction schedule off that, a procurement schedule off that, and a design schedule off that. And we did all that. And it was fun looking back at this design schedule. So this is June 2019, and this was a working document. You know, here are comments that we were circulating. And I think the reason I wanted to show that here is because days really, really matter. You know, you've got 5 years, and it's easy to let stuff slide. But if you let one thing slide, then everyone thinks it's okay to let stuff slide, and you let 2 things slide, and stuff can spiral really fast. And I just appreciated seeing that way back in June of 2019, early design, we're in the midst of early procurement, and it just broken ground, and we were pushing, like, you know, not what week is it going to be done, but what day is it going to be done. And I think that was a really important principle that existed throughout the team, at all levels, throughout the entire project. And you know, at that point we were still estimating when are we going to be done with design a year later. And how did we do against that? We did pretty good. We weren't perfect, but this was, I don't know, call it a concept design schedule for a year out in the future. You know, we had anticipated 100% CD set, and right here, you can't see it, there was a 60% CD set. You know, in practice, there were actually multiple other design packages that got issued there as we, got closer to those dates and worked with the field team to get the packages that we needed to put out on the street to get the bids and get the trade partners on board that we needed to execute all that. So overall, right there at the end of 2020, we were a little bit behind on our procurement from what we had anticipated. But that's probably not that bad, considering that in March of 2020, we had gone all virtual on all of our pre-bid meetings and trying to roll through the pandemic just like everyone else was. And I think what was key there was just teamwork and communication and knowing where we could flex, where we could let stuff slide, and knowing where we had to be really firm on holding our dates. I guess one thing I would point out there is I'm going to use the drywall package as an example on a couple slides here. And that one was a big one that we were able to get done pretty close to the time we were shooting for. Again, getting started on the right foot is about getting your team together. So as Matt and Chris both mentioned, large design team, local partners, M&W partners, and this was set up all the way back in February of 2017. So there's no way to keep the overall project on schedule if you don't have the first step on schedule. And I think this represents that the right people were there to keep the project on schedule. Most of these firms were on board for the duration, and are still out there helping us tie up every loose end and punch list item and close out the job. But some of those took it to various levels of design and then handed off to design build partners. And I think this was a really important part of our success, was assigning design to the right level where we could optimize it, we could control the risk and really deliver that best value. So highlighting some of them here, the parking garage, over $100 million design build package. It's really important to break these mega projects into sizable pieces of work. And that was one of the early ones that I think was really effective, assigning that to J.E. Dunn and BNIM. Capital Electric, U.S. Engineering, great partners, collaborating with Henderson, who was there to serve not only our design team, but also you can see that they were on the systems integration team as well. So having Henderson there with all those parties was really important. And all these partners not only supported themselves, but they supported the overall project. Having them in as design build partners encouraged them and benefited the whole project to participate not just in their direct work, but in all the work for the project. A number of other design build scopes, baggage handling, another good example. And then we had several design assist and unofficial design assist roles. And wanted to give a shout out to some of those companies as well. E&K, Heitkamp, AGP, all really there to be a part of the team, to be a part of the project, to bring good ideas. Some of these partners came on late in the midst of the pandemic. We were about halfway through our procurement when the pandemic hit, and then that led to all the market disruptions, which most of us are probably well familiar with, and having those partners who were there willing to help us solve problems and get product for the job on site and find the right product that was available was really, really key. Big job comes with big processes. This is a flow chart of our typical procurement process. We're going to show an example of the drywall over there again. So basically spent 6 weeks getting that package ready. Coordinating with the operations team, coordinating with the design team, coordinating with the client, to make sure that it was ready to go out on the street in a way that everyone was satisfied. 4 weeks of bidding, That was probably about an average for us. It was important that not only the design gets to us on time, but it's also important that the trade partners be willing to turn in numbers on time. It was a tough market, always. There's always plenty to do, but we got to keep the process moving, the field, feed the work in the field. And then another 4 weeks probably of going through the scoping of the bids, interviews on large packages, and making an award and getting concurrence on that from the client. So this was basically a process that we used over and over. We had probably 15 different procurement packages that went out over the course of the job, and establishing the process and sticking to it made it easier for everyone to engage, whether that's the design team or the client, and knowing how that was going to work. Also, we had trade partners who would participate in multiple packages. A carpentry company can bid to a lot of different subcontractors, particularly the M&W partners. So having a process that they knew and could engage in easily was really key.
And once it got to us, we couldn't wait. We were excited to get these guys on board and get them coordinating. This is a great photo for all the different layers and all the different companies involved. U.S. Engineering, Mechanical Piping, American Fire Sprinkler, Vanderlande, J-John Concrete, E&K put the installation up. There was a ton of coordination and collaboration that went into this effort. And that started really early. So we really wanted to determine sequences that, a constant flow through the job. As Matt highlighted at the beginning, we had some challenges in terms of getting certain areas available to us because of utility relocations. But once we got the trade partners involved and we got the sequence defined, we continued to follow that and hold the trade partners to that plan. We then took that work and shared that between the follow-on trades to make sure that we were really tracking to what's real, where are we going to be at, where do we project to be at, and plan accordingly as we went. So we then took that into weekly meetings where everybody's involved, everybody's engaged. Wasn't quite this many people, but it was pretty close. So the foreman managing the sheet metals in there, hearing when the deck's going to be ready so that he can get his inserts in and get ready to go. That kind of engagement. So we initially started with, I'm going to focus on our steel just for an example, but this was carried through the project from a glazing sequence to precast to all kinds of trades. We developed this sequence really, really early on, right? So this plan was put together in January of 2020. We were going to start steel in about mid-April. And a couple of challenges we had here. Building 4, which is at the top, that's the photo I previously showed, 10A, 11A, 12A. So that's your retail nodes today. Those are on podium decks because underneath is a ICC 500 rated structure, storm shelter. So those areas had a different flow because they weren't built the same way. So we developed a steel sequence, buildings 1, 2, and 3, which is your Concourse B South, that's where Southwest Airlines is, and then jumping over and attacking that head house area as soon as we could. We started a second crew, we defined when that was going to start, and worked through having a second crew, and then a third heading as we needed. So as we got started from that initial plan, we dove into the details, right down to the day. So you've got some key dates that I'm going to highlight, but we had to hit these marks, right? We're developing these work plans and we're highlighting some of our challenges and communicating this on a weekly basis with each of these trades, and we're giving them to the other trades, right? This is not a secret what the steel guy is doing. These are his targets. So April 6th, we want to start. We're going to move into building 2, and once we get that first operation started, we're going to move over to building 14 and start a second crew at the same time, right? So now we've got 2 headings. And then as we move through, we wanted to attack those podium areas as soon as we could. So based on the podium dates, that's in July, that's where we were headed. So how do we do, right? That's the big question. So buildings 1, 2, and 3, we were going to start April 6th. Well, if the animation works, here's our construction camera, April 7th, we're on top, right? And then as we move through into building 2, how do we do? Here we go. April 23rd was supposed to be our date, and here we are within a couple days of that. And we're starting our second crew. You can see this yellow crane down at the bottom. Steel's on the ground, it's shook out, it's ready to go the Friday before they started standing steel up. And then when they moved where they were supposed to, building 3. We thought that was going to be in June, but actually we were able to get that steel there earlier and get started. So that has an effect, right? We have to be planning real time as we do that when that date gets pulled up. And then as you start Concourse A South, the area that Matt was highlighting, which is now your international wing of A South, making sure we get that crane over there and get ready to go. So all of that was critical in making sure that we understood where we were going to be and hit our marks. So that lower left picture is our slab of metal deckwork plan, and that's for building 2. And we want to make sure that we are aligned between our dates, right? So that deck was going to be ready for our MEP trades to put their bang-it inserts, US special, if they love that, right? So we wanted to make sure that they hit that date. So we're coordinating the BIM clash detection up to the same date. So you can see on the, kind of on the right, for those that can read it, the source is your different work plans and the date we need to be ready to go. And that's carried through to the steel slab of metal deckwork plan so that everybody's talking, everybody understands, hey, the deck's available this date, this is your window, be ready to go. And these are the dates that we gotta hit to make sure that we do that. And you know, we were trying to support multiple headings across the job, and so this was a single source of like, here's the dates when we gotta be ready. And if you know anything about clashing a building, this basically has us clashing 1 million square feet in 6 months. So it was really fast, and those trades worked really hard, and that was about a 6-week process to turn, you know, from an initial class content in the model to review it, shop drawings, into the architect, get it reviewed, and back, ready for the field. And so those guys did an incredible job. And as we finished kind of this process, we continued to break the building down into chunks. So this is what we call the SIPs, the short interval production schedule. And what we tried to do and what we were successful in doing is breaking the building down into smaller sections of like process so that we could manageably flow through the building and really understand a common sequence as it relates. It's not perfect, it's got flaws, and it's got things that, you know, you've got to work through it on a weekly basis, that building 3 might have a different MEP sequence than buildings 1 and 2, but you're talking, you're working through it, and you have a kind of defined range of where you're going to be. We also sectioned out different parts of the building that didn't meet that section. The MERs would be an example, and then that section in blue right down the middle, that's the connector. That's the baggage handling equipment. That's not the same as building out a back-of-house office. So we built a different schedule for it. The head house in green, that's a different area, right? If you have been there, it's terrazzo floors, it's high finishes. It's a totally different build-out than your standard office and break rooms that exist in some of the concourses. But we did the same thing on both levels, right? So this is the departures level SIPs. And we're chunking it out into small sections and making sure that the dates and the flow are clearly defined. We want to make sure that we understand where people need to be, when they need to be there. And we carry that through to material procurement. We carry that through for other subs. It all integrated, right? And then we want to make sure that there's a little bit of float in there. We have some catch-up activities as we need. Not too many, but we want to make sure that we hit our marks and we understand our key milestones and we hit them as we go, because we do not want to get off track. So we want to know, hey, when drywall starts, that's the date. We're not moving the drywall start date. Like, we might fudge a little bit on this MEP work, but when drywall's ready, that's the date. So be ready to go. And so this is kind of what it looks like, right? The sequence is repetitive. This is done with trade engagement. This is done with the foreman actually telling you, you know, what we ended up with was about a 3-week stagger between buildings, and that was driven from the sheet metal work. I can't go faster than this, Matt. This is what we need. And so that's how we built the schedule and we built the flow. This version of this, we color coded it so each trade can kind of see where they're at. So when you get halfway through this schedule, how many buildings are you working in at the same time? How do I staff this? What's this look like? And it's predictable. We made this schedule in summer of 2020, and it didn't change because we got the engagement, we got the buy-in, we had the plan, and we wanted to make sure we did it. Don't get me wrong, we had challenges, right? We had internal design bulletins that we had to go backwards. We had other contractors come in behind us and do other work. Mark Tower, where you at? But we were successful because we knew where we needed to be and we knew what we wanted to achieve, and so we had a framework by which everyone could operate. And so this really allows for your crews to be visually understanding, and we go through this every week, right? Where are we at and where are we going? We couldn't have done this without being safe and without our team engagement. And we want to highlight some of that. A couple of things that we feel like we're differentiators on the safety side of things. We don't do a traditional kickoff where we talk about all the work and all the stuff and all. We do a safety kickoff totally separate. Should there be an incident, should we have something going on, we do a stand down for near misses. We get into the root of why did it happen and how do we prevent it, and then we communicate that to everybody. Hey, this happened, this is what we saw, we need you to learn from this. We inspect every crane that comes to the job site. We make sure we have a good plan. We have a crane packet we go through. It's about a 2-week process. You don't show up with a crane and go to work. And we have to have the discipline and the structure to say, no man, that doesn't work. You gotta send that crane away because we aren't expecting it, or we're not gonna do this. We're not rushing crane work. We did a safety stand down every week. We shut down unsafe work when we saw it and made sure that we got the crew trued up and right-sized of, hey, this is how we do business on this job, we're not doing this. But we also were proactive in discussing safety. What's your plan? How are you gonna do it safely? And then we had carpenters if there were incidents that arose. Ultimately, our goal was to send people home safely, and we were pretty successful at doing that. We peaked at around 1,000 workers total, and just over 5.5 million labor hours on there. We did regrettably have a couple of incidents, 15 total, but ultimately we feel like we were successful as a whole. We ended up with an incident recordable rate of 0.54, and the industry average is around 3. So we were very successful in that, and we feel really positive about that. But ultimately, our goal is always 0, and so we want to continue to focus on that and continue to refine that process so that we can make sure that we do send people home safely.
Thanks, Matt. I think that captures what to me is one of the most important principles and cornerstones of our success was trying to make everyone successful, whether that's craft workers going home safely, whether that's airlines getting the space they need, whether that's the city getting the project on time. Having that mentality, that project first mentality that Chris alluded to, was really key to success, and you can see all the effort that went in on the coordination to make sure that the work was available for the trades to start the work on schedule and be able to maintain a good flow that allows them to be profitable. And from an office side, getting that material to the site, especially during 2021, was a real challenge. We couldn't find a container. Our tile was sitting there in Italy ready to go. There's no way to ship it. These were challenges that a lot of us probably didn't anticipate going into the job, but challenges that we had to work through. And the way we did that was essentially digging into every level of detail we possibly could. We had an extensive material tracking log, which allowed everyone on our team to see at any time where every piece was and what the step it was on. So does it need the SMITL approved? Is it at the factory? Is it sitting in a warehouse in Kansas City? We had a lot of pieces that we needed to bring together in 2021, and being able to track those effectively was a real key to its success. And using that as a communication tool, the log itself is not valuable unless we use it to get results. And the best way to get results was with direct in-person communication whenever possible. I like these photos because they represent 2 of our 3 visits to the quarry where all the limestone on the job came from. That's Phoenix Quarry down near Springfield, Missouri. When you walk in the head house, that monumental wall on the west side is all basically that stone you see on that ledge right there. And we went there initially, we went back again. And I like this picture on the bottom left here because it captures us taking the photo. The vendor is there supporting the review of the stone. The architect is there in Springfield, Missouri for the review. We've got our primary trade partner and their MBE partner, all there working to get the right stone to the job on time. That in-person collaboration and making the effort to go visit sites is really important, and visiting offices, showing that effort, that commitment to success and making that investment is just absolutely critical, and was especially critical when every construction job in the world wanted their materials. So how do we differentiate ourselves and make sure that we get ours as fast as possible by showing up and building those relationships with those vendors. And there's a lot of accountability too. Every obligation that we had as a general contractor to Edgemoor, to the city, has to flow down to all of our partners. You know, there's no way around that. And that includes not only all our construction obligations, but all of our community benefits as well. So MBE goals, sponsoring workforce training program participants, signing the community workforce agreement, having the right labor participation to meet our labor participation goals, all that we had to meet to be successful, and for us to be successful, all of our trade partners had to do it too. And so making sure they were contractually obligated to that was critical. But that's not enough, because all these are big goals. This is the biggest job in the city's history. It's the biggest job for a lot of our trade partners, and we have to support them to meet those goals. So a couple of programs that we put in place to do that. We had a strategic partnership program. There were several classes. It was essentially a abbreviated MBA program to teach business skills, to teach contracting skills, to build up our capacity, particularly in the M&W market, and pay without delay program to facilitate people being able to work on a big job. Everyone should know, probably knows, that the subs are really financing the job. Our trade partners are financing the job, and helping them pay their bills faster really contributes to the project's success. Pre-bid meetings and our whole procurement process, we really tried to treat it like a tool, a collaborative effort. It wasn't just an obligation. They weren't even mandatory. But we used them as opportunities to help our trade partners build relationships, especially building relationships between primary subs and M&W partners. One unique thing that we had was an on-site rental program. So we had a procurement for a rental program, and any vendor could apply. We ended up awarding it to United Rentals, and they basically leased 1 acre of land from the city and then used that to make a more efficient rental program on site. It was easier for subs to share equipment. The rates were set for all our trade partners, so even for smaller businesses who maybe didn't have the opportunity to rent equipment at the same price as a larger business, they were in at a fixed rate that benefited everybody. So saved costs, made for a safer and more efficient job site. So that was a really...
Sorry, Matt, 1 second. On that rental program, that was not a profit center for us. We had nothing to do with, we got help get the equipment there, so it was a fair, comparable bidding process for all companies, small and large, but that was outside of us. We just got agreed upon rates from United Rental so that everybody had a level platform of bidding work on the job. So we saw no, because there's some rental programs out there where the general contractor can take savings from and do all that. We didn't do any of that. It was purely United Rental rented directly to the contractor, but it was a way for us to help level the playing field for all.
That's a good point, thank you. So at the end of the day, we saw success. There was hard work, but it yielded results. We exceeded our minority business participation goals. We exceeded our women business participation goals. We had those same goals on the professional services side, on the design team, as we did on the construction side. Met them on both categories. A lot of Kansas City business participation. A lot of participation from the residents of Kansas City, exceeding our workforce goals. Happy to be able to share that.
Yeah, so just a couple things. I think you saw, hopefully you gained from the presentation today, you got to start out with a solid plan. It's not a plan just generated from the Clark White's Clarkson team, right? That we started the process, but it was buy-in, right? It was true buy-in and having our trade partners, our design partners, everybody there with us along the way, developing the plan. We put together the skeleton, but at the end of the day, it had to be the plan, everybody involved. What is everybody's capacity? How can they do it? What makes them successful, right? We're all in a business to make a reasonable profit. And it's not fair if you have some people doing really well and some people not. So it is a collaborative approach, understanding the pinch points, right? We have pinch points, everybody has different pinch points along the way on what they can and can't do. And if there's a pinch point, how do you supplement, not in a bad way, right? How do you give them the resources they need to be successful? And I think it was all about the project first mentality, right? Everybody, all of our trade partners, US, Capital, all of our design build, E&K, you name them, and sorry for the ones I didn't name, but it was true collaboration. It was project first. This job's gonna get done on time and on budget. Everybody knew that, that was the plan. There was no hidden goals. We found out, believe it or not, that our contract got pulled back 3 months when they announced the NFL draft and said that the airport's gonna be open for that. Like, that's great. Glad someone told us before we put it on the news. But the next day it's go to work and figure out with the client, all right, what does this mean to you? What do we now need to do to shift and flex, right? How do we now take the job that we were planning on finishing in June and now we need to finish in March? It was collaboration with the client. What are we willing to do to make that happen as a group? Is there long lead materials that maybe need to be changed out? Things like that. How do we put some temporary watertight on some of the buildings that we weren't planning on originally? But how do we as a team, whole collective team, get it done successfully? And there's not one company, one person that made this job successful. It was true collaboration from the owner all the way down to the final cleaner at the end of the job, cleaning up the space, making it look presentable for the passengers to go to the airport. So it was true collaboration with everybody, and everybody had to be all in. So, and I would say our team members we signed up the right team members. We signed up, the right people to do the job that could be successful. And we helped build capacity in the market, right? That was the goal. We have the statistics here. The statistics show we were successful, but we feel we built real capacity in the market, helping Kansas City build into the future. So I think that's all we have. If anybody has any questions, thoughts that they'd like to talk about, hopefully the questions are easy.
How many schedulers did you have in this project, and how did they align critical paths with all the packages that you're putting together?
One scheduler. However, that's the superintendents for our organization from the general contractor side are required as part of their job to build their work plan. Those work plans you saw on the screen that Matt put up there for steel, that was built by the person managing the steel. That was not made for this presentation. That is how she, as in Liliana, that was her work, she managed those trades to put that work in place. She would have her plan, she would update her plan, and then the scheduler would take and put it back into P6 and ensure that, all right, are we tracking? Like, Liliana, you have this plan, but is it real? Is it working? Oh, hold on, we gotta shift over here a little bit. Let's go look at it. Let's go get back with the steel guys. Let's make sure we get with the MEP guys to make sure those bang-its are going in the deck on time. So the superintendent's required. Matt oversaw the lower level, a gentleman by the name Pete oversaw the upper level. So they managed their buildings, which is 500,000 square foot each if you just divide a little bit over 500,000, but you get the point. Just divide it up so that they were the sole keeper of that, but we had one scheduler in P6, but the superintendents make the plan, not the scheduler. Did I answer your question very long-windedly?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
At what point did you realize it was or were you confident it was gonna open on February 28th? And I have two questions. The other one is, what's the biggest thing you do differently?
So for me, I don't want to answer all the questions. I would say the job was always tracking, probably within a month of itself all along. We determined we started having the conversations with the client that, pulling it back from beginning March to February 28th. Those conversations probably start October, November that'd be 2022. And then as we continued to get closer, the clients, got a little bit nervous, like, are we really gonna hit the date? Because we can't announce this to the public until we're absolutely certain that this is the date, because that's, not gonna be good for any of us. And then once we put the date, it was the date. I think at the end, being honest, I think it would have been nice to have 2 more weeks, because I think we got there. Everybody worked hard. We worked a lot of hours. We were there day and night. But there was, the challenges were some system integration, right? How do you bring all of this together and make sure the doors operate with all of the electronics, with the security system, when the camera comes on, and all of that stuff happens. I would say that was, the construction itself, like as in terrazzo and drywall and woods, that was done. We were already done when we made that announcement. That was done in probably, October with that real, except for the fine tuning. But it was all the system integration that we allowed time for at the end. And I think 2 more weeks for us would have been a little better. We got it done and it all opened, but it was not for a lack of a lot of long hours over that last couple months. So something you do differently. I'll let you sum up when I'm talking.
I think that Chris hit on it, like the make it work part was by far the most challenging. We have a tremendous amount of systems. We were very successful in getting several of them on early, right? So we started blowing cold air in buildings 1 and 2 in June of 2021. So we were running permanent air conditioning in hand June of 2021. So we were very conditioned in terms of operating the mechanical equipment, but getting that dialed in, fine-tuned, hitting design points, commissioning, and all of the integrated systems, the doors Chris talked about, the security system, the camera call-ups. You know, when we open an AED and pick up the AED, it's supposed to call a camera and alert the police. Well, you gotta test all that, right? And you have about, I don't know, we probably have 10,000 little touch points of things that we needed to test. And it was very hard to get those all ready, operational, the space was ready. People were pulling fiber in our ceilings hours before we opened. But, you know, like
How is that 5G system?
it's fabulous. It's the best thing that's ever been put in that airport. But the reality is that we really, you know, that probably if we would have changed that, trying to pull that schedule forward, I think we always tried to get there, but that would be the thing that I would figure out how we start that testing a month earlier than we did. So, other questions?
The engagement numbers that you showed seem to hinge on local employment of numbers of firms and people in the workforce. Was there also a public input component to that, or not really?
What do you mean when you say public input?
Well, a lot of the public engagement processes that our firm uses do end up having a public input process that's considered part of the engagement. I just wondered if that was something that your design team or anyone else tried to do as part of this.
There was a huge effort on that. We had a big team, and we tended to take work with the design that was given to us, and maybe we kind of looked over that. But had you had a different group of presenters up here, that would have been a huge focus point of theirs, because town hall meetings in all the districts across the city, that year 2017, Edgemore announced as the successful bidder to groundbreaking in March of 2018, tons of outreach. And I think that was a key to the success, is having the community bought into it. I don't know if I'll ever get to work on a project again in my life in which there's so much excitement and energy and like a will making it successful.
Because Edgemore got the job, but they still needed the votes, right? The downtown Kansas City, Missouri, people that live within the city limits still had to vote on the airport to go forward. So there was a lot of active community engagement out there. Here's the plan. What does everybody want to see in the airport? I mean, but that was everybody, right? That wasn't just SOM, as in our designer, led the effort, but it was Clark. It was our design build partners. Like, you name it. It was the all-in mentality. Everybody was all in on everything because you had to be. The job was too big, too many touch points. $1.5 billion. It's not. It takes a big village, if you will, to build this thing, not just a small few people involved to get it going. Did we answer your question?
Yes, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Anybody else have any questions? Here, there we go.
Is there anything that got VE'd out that you wish could have been different or could have been included, or?
So I would say from that standpoint, there was many things in the job, and I have to think of one that you guys can, that was VE'd out early in the job. And then as the job continued to progress in construction and the risk for the job as a whole shrunk, we were then able to add things back into the job that the owner wanted. Hence, that was great, but that also made a lot of more work for us and the design team and our trade partners at the end to now go put that XYZ back into the job. So at the end of the day, I would say the owner got everything they wanted and some, because there was savings along the way that they could put back into the project. Because every penny, every dollar spent is coming from the airlines, right? They get their revenue from gate fees, right? They charge the airline XYZ to have an airplane, to have this gate, and that's how they repay the debt for the project. So when you go and buy an airplane ticket, you're contributing to helping pay for the new airport. The money did not come out of city funds or anything like that. There also was some government, they were able to do some things, they were able to design, like for our pavement, for example, there are several ways to design the pavement for the air side. However, if you want to repair that over time and get money from the federal government as in the owner, repair that, in 20 years when it degrades or whatever it is, you have to build it per their specs today because they will not give you funding later or contribute to helping fix it later. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff that we had to keep in mind as we were designing along the way.
I'll add one thing to that, which is they made some common sense things, and they're, if you've been in the airport, there's this fantastic digital fountain that sits right in the middle, right? The bag claim check baggage system is right below that. That used to be a water fountain and not the beautiful display of art. So for me, that was actually positive because I think that simplified a lot of project risk, and I think everybody agrees that that fountain is really spectacular and really probably a better addition to the airport than a water fountain would be, a bubbling fountain. So that's one that always sticks to mind.
Another question, I know it's designed for expansion. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah. So you can take the 40 gates that are currently there now to 50 gates. However, you have to take down Terminal B itself, which the plan is the airport is planning on taking that down over the next, it has to be done within 5 years, hopefully sooner versus later. You could go out that B concourse, so if we'll go back to the beginning and show you where that goes. So that is where the easiest expansion is. And the head house itself and all of the infrastructure in the job is ready to be at 50 gates. You may have to go out, another chiller, but there's a space for it, right? But the head house itself and all of that other stuff will support that part going to 50 gates.
Do they foresee the need for that? I mean, as they approached opening,
I don't
probably
think
good now, but
they're good now. I mean, it's all about, and I wish I knew the numbers, but it's all about the efficiency. So, when you talk to the aviation department, they're very focused. It's not all about how many gates you have. It's just how efficient, how many planes can you get in and out. And the efficiency for this airport, where they went from about 60 gates down to 40 gates, it's the efficiency actually allowed them to double the capacity. So just take an old facility that needed upgraded, and you can actually use less gates now and be twice as efficient. I don't have exactly the numbers because that's kind of the airport's thing, but when we walk and give tours of the job when we're walking with them, that's kind of the theme. So I think over time, someday, yes, as airlines continue to expand, but as of right now, they definitely still have more room to bring in more flights in and out at the current gate configuration.
So looking at that diagram, is that the international
Yes.
portion? So the only expansion is international?
Well, so those are swing gates. When I say that, there's doors that divide them up. So you can have one gate be international, and it pushes you down to the lower level to go through Customs and Border Patrol and grab your bag. So that's why they call them swing gates, or they can use them for domestic flights. That was the design the whole time. And those are city gates as well, so that they can then, if there's say Southwest is overloaded, or there was a storm somewhere or wherever, they can bring a plane in there, get people off, and go on their way. So it was designed to function as either. However, if you do come from international, you have to go downstairs and come back to the United States through Customs and Border Patrol.
But the expansion to the terminal would be A South. That would be the spot that those gates are added.
Are they doing de-icing at the gates or somewhere else?
They're doing them over by Terminal B and Terminal C temporarily. However, when Terminal B and Terminal C do get demoed, there's a whole de-icing pad and facility that's gonna be built over there. But we can't do that right now until B and C are actually demoed. But there is a temporary de-icing pad. And part of the work we're still doing up there today is around Terminal B. There's some pavement work we couldn't do prior to opening day because Southwest would not have been able to operate because we had to move them over to the new terminal, then go finish a little bit of pavement. So there's actually 3 gates on the end of the new terminal that are not operating right now because Southwest needs to get into that south cul-de-sac. And if we did that before, we had to shut all of their operations down. But that was planned, that was a part of the plan the whole time, after opening day work for us.
This is more of a process thing for the airport, but do you have any idea of what percentage of, which percentage of the flights would say Southwest versus the next 2? I know they have a large majority, but I don't know if you had an idea of what percentage of flights are Southwest versus others.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
It's more of an
question.
operations thing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Southwest has that whole wing over there on the top left-hand side, so they have most of the gates. That's all of Southwest there. And then the other airlines are spread throughout.
They have 12 gates.
12.
They have 12, United has 5, Delta has 5. American has 6.
Any other questions?
It's gonna run the plus this time.